Good evening. Quote, life isn't about finding yourself. Life is about creating yourself. George Bernard Shaw. Unquote. We are blessed to have such beautiful soul amongst us who through all ups and downs have created life as beautiful as it should be, not for themselves alone, but for many, many more people around them. Good evening, namaste, and welcome to Spectrum, the Awareness Project. I hope you all are doing well, and thank you for being with us. So we are a parent support group committed to create awareness about the role of community in supporting the children on spectrum disabilities. A warm welcome and thanks to all of you for joining yet another insightful session, Talk to the Expert Series 98. So theme for today's series is Empowering Parents, Exploring Possibilities. So before we start, allow me to introduce myself. I'm Neena Girish. I worked as a school librarian in Delhi for past 14 years. And our school follows an inclusive pattern that includes children with special needs. And I started my career as an invigilator for special needs children till a special educator was appointed. And 2 children with autism caught my attention and eagerness to know more about them. And a curious librarian was eager to contribute best of my knowledge to help such children. And that's how I came in touch with Dr. Shivali and a wonderful team. So without any delay, let me welcome today's guest and expert, Ms. Swathi Vellal, founder director of Ishanya India Foundation, a not-for-profit organization working with persons with disabilities in Bangalore. Swathi, a dedicated special educator, didn't take long to realize her career path. She has been working with individuals with autism spectrum disorder from the beginning of her career. Her strong communication skills and ability to observe knowledge has made her proficient in her field. She believes that technology gives a leveling field of PWDS in the areas of social, economic, and civic participation, and uses different mediums of assistive technology to aid persons with disabilities. Welcome, ma'am, and thank you for accepting our invite as an expert. Your guidance will definitely throw new dimension and ray of hope to all our listeners and parents. So to begin with, I would like to ask you to share with us your journey of creating IIF, Ishanya India Foundation, from 2015 to 2023.
Thank you so much, Neena. Thank you for inviting me. Very, very happy to be here. So, journey. Okay. Actually, the money I received as a gift for my wedding, a part of it went into funding a small portion of my tuition fees for second master's in special education. And a portion of it went into starting Ishanya. And that's how our journey began. So when I started, it's not that I had this big vision and I knew it all and I'd figured it all. But I think it was really just that, the sheer love for working with these children that got me started. And of course, I always had this thought that every individual, deserves to be looked at for their strengths, to be accepted as they are. But at the same time, provide interventions that would sort of work on their difficulties without damaging their sense of self-worth. Very, very important. So all our programs today, focus on strength-based approach. But having said that, focusing on strengths doesn't mean, challenges are neglected. So the trainings here, we try as much as possible to have a balance of both, working on their difficulties, but also understanding the strengths that each individual has. So we create opportunities for them to experience success that, they can capitalize on to persevere through all the challenges that they may face. And we've always believed in the mantra of self-sustenance. So we spend the next few years trying to understand the space that we are in, the whole NGO sector, the kind of individuals that we met, and to create better programs. So we wanted to be sure of what we do before we scale up. And I think eventually, we added one program after the other, catering to different age groups. And in fact, when the pandemic hit, uh, we were so worried. We didn't know how to sort of translate everything that we do in special education online. It was very challenging. We had to train our staff. We had to train the parents. Of course, there was, although the absence of human touch remained a critical factor. Thanks to technology, we were able to achieve a lot. Children coped up so well. We were like very, very surprised. So currently we operate in three verticals. We have the education, where we run programs related to school readiness, related to pre-academic skills. We have the NIOS program from OBE to 10th and 12th. And when it comes to livelihood, we run a transition program that sort of identifies all the skill gaps that exist, apart from training them in vocations like graphic designing, photo editing, video editing. We have a certification in basic and advanced program in computer science. And the last leg of the training, which is job readiness, which is a very uniquely curated program that looks at building that self-awareness, building self-advocacy skills to prepare them for the next leg. And the third vertical being capacity building or outreach. We work with corporates to create awareness. At the same time, we work in rural Karnataka to create awareness on neurodevelopmental disabilities among various stakeholders. It could be special educators, it could be caregivers, it could be students from various streams. We've had nursing students, we had psychology students, BEd students, to village rehabilitation workers, multi-purpose rehabilitation workers. We've had ASHA facilitators. So that's how, we divide our programs: education, livelihood, and capacity building. Neena, I think you're mute.
That was, a wonderful journey that you have been telling. So my second question is, you mentioned the vision of Ishanya to create a society built on diversity, equity and inclusion for persons with disability. That is the vision of Ishanya. So can you just help us with the thought and spirit behind this initiative?
Sure. The thought, behind this is actually very simple. We are constantly, I think, working towards a society that celebrates and, embraces diversity in all forms. But of course, in our case, specifically disability. We are working towards, ensuring that every individual is recognized as, of course, different, and that how these differences need to be respected and appreciated. And equity, because we want to ensure that these individuals have equal access, wherever they go, equal access to opportunities, to resources, to services, whatever services that they may need to thrive and reach their full potential. And it acknowledges that different people may need different levels of support, but to reach that equal outcome that we expect from everyone. And inclusion, of course, and our tagline also says journey to inclusion, meaning actively sort of, I would say, involving and welcoming individuals with disabilities in all aspects of society. So it involves mainly breaking down all the barriers, both physical, but I think mainly attitudinal. In fact, I'm happy to share that we have a neurodiverse advisory board. So we reach out to them very frequently for various initiatives. We get their inputs, we get their thoughts. And we didn't have this in the past. This thought was actually triggered after reading a book by James Charlton called Nothing About Us Without Us. This book actually, it's beautifully written. A lot of advocacy and policy, etc., comes into the picture with there, and it clearly expresses the conviction of people with disabilities that they know what is best for them. And I think it's definitely a must read for the community as well.
Yes. Yeah, we'll definitely go through the book so that it may help all of us. So coming on to the third question, can you just tell us, share with us what are the various ways through which IIF empowers parents?
Okay. See, parents have been a core of what we do at Ishanya. I still remember in 2018, um, till 2018, we mostly had, one-to-one sessions and it was more of remediation, etc. But we never really looked at starting off with any of the group programs or looking at, what next. This was when a group of parents reached out to us and they said, all this is great, but then what next for my child? They need to be working in a group. They need to get prepared for the next phase of life. So before we started our group program, and that was specifically a transition program for young adults, we had a very interesting exercise. We did a focus group discussion for curriculum planning and enhancement. And we had maximum representation from the parent community. It's not that these were parents who were part of Ishanya and therefore they represented, but we had a lot of new parents coming in as well. It was just a note sent to a lot of them, and many parents turned up because they were curious, they wanted to understand, they wanted to contribute. So and we strongly believe that parental involvement is one of the main factors influencing outcomes. So they are a part of almost all the initiatives we take up today. Even to this day, I mean, very sad to say this, but even to this day, mothers are often blamed for anything that happens to a child. And I mean, we think, right, like 21st century, things have changed, but we still meet mothers. I mean, in Bangalore, we still meet families, we meet mothers who are blamed, who are criticized all the time, not just for giving birth to a child with disability, but even after that, anything that happens, anything small that happens, it's the mother's responsibility. So we have regular counseling sessions with them. We spend a lot of time talking to them. We connect them with other parents and help them find that support system, because what we really feel is empowering parents should not be is not just is but should not be limited to subjects like teaching them tips or on intervention or any interventions that they're part of or child raising, but it really needs to be about helping them build resilience, so they can deal with their situations in a better state of mental health. Physical health, yes, most of them do try as much as possible, but nobody really focuses on mental health of parents, right? So we encourage them to do that. We organize workshops called Sunday Sip. These sessions basically are for the parents, to meet other parents, to meet professionals, or it could be practical or emotional support. It's basically a platform, it's a platform to learn new things, to find resources, and it's a safe place for them to vent out, to share achievements as well. And in fact, as part of our Samarthya project, where we do a lot of work in rural Karnataka, we meet parents every time, we travel. We organize like small meetings where we meet parents just to understand what they're thinking, what is their expectation, and we help them with whatever knowledge and resources that they may need. And in fact, we're currently working towards forming a support group similar to what we have here, because it's really important to find your tribe, right? And parenting is never supposed to be done alone, whether it's a neurotypical child or a neurodivergent child. So yeah, I mean, these are some of the ways we've been trying to empower parents.
Yeah, I totally agree, because every time the mother is blamed, while it should be a collective, effort by the family as such. Well said.
Yeah.
Okay, coming on to the next question is, can you recommend some communication apps to start the communication journey for a person on the spectrum? And one more question along with that is there any specific age beyond which a person can't be taught to pick up communication?
Okay. See, I think there are a lot of communication apps available right now. Especially, I think it really picked up during the pandemic because parents were helpless. They needed some solution, they needed tools to manage things on their own, unlike before pandemic, where they would just drop off children at various centers, various therapy places, schools, etc. And of course did have an idea on what was going on, but then it was a lot more during pandemic. So there was a lot of new research that happened, a lot of new applications that came up. But I think like what we frequently use here at Ishanya, one is Avaz, second is Proloco to Go. This is another beautiful app, very robust communication tool. In both these applications, there's a picture category, there's a typing category, and they can in fact type with configurable word predictions as well. And both these apps are completely customizable. Every aspect of it can be customized. From pictures, you can add pictures and you can record it, so you can click picture from the app, you can download the picture as well, and you can add your own voice, like mother or the father or anybody, the therapist can record the voice and add it there. Fonts can be customized, the way the pronunciation can be customized, so it's completely customizable. And coming to the second question, right? I don't think there's no specific age, but then I think there are certain critical periods in human development that can really impact your language acquisition and communication. So what happens, the neurological changes, right, that occur with age, that can make language acquisition very, very challenging. But it's not impossible. Every time actually we have a discussion on this with my team. We do have a speech and language therapist. We have two of them who've been trained with AAC. What comes up frequently is, I think we must presume competence, and that's not what we do. We think non-speaking is non-thinking. So a lot of parents do just give up. In fact, I met a parent recently, and honestly, I was surprised because this boy, it felt like he understands everything, but they don't talk to him at home. So when you don't talk, it becomes really difficult. So you have to, sort of presume competence. Outwardly, he may look like he's not understanding, but there is understanding. Outwardly, he is a certain way. So I feel, in the team as such, we've had we keep having multiple discussions, and we feel we must presume competence and continue to teach in a way that's most suitable or most, for that particular individual. Maybe some of them are not ready to start with an app. A simple communication board, that may be more useful, where they have easy access to whatever their basic needs are. Probably it's there right on their table, so they can easily point to that. Some of them, in fact, we've seen over a period of time, and that too I'm referring to, adolescents and adults, not necessarily just children. They outgrow the picture category. They don't want to point, they don't want to use just those pictures. That's a sign that we can, extend further. So we start off with apps. It could be Avaz or it could be anything else. We customize it for them. And then they outgrow that as well. So we get them to type. They may have difficulty with spellings, but with training and with word predictions, we see that they're able to pick up, but it takes a lot of time, especially with the older ones. It takes a lot of time. We just have to be patient. As therapists, we really need to be patient, and with parents as well, they need to be patient and to be done very consistently. In fact, with one of our students, he's actually in his 20s. Although we started off with an app, all he needs right now is just a simple notepad to communicate. He communicates quite well with typing. His sentences, in fact, are not perfect, but I think we understand, and we understand what he's trying to convey. And that's good enough for now. Of course, there's obviously opportunities for further language development and communication, but he's come a long way from using simple communication, from being nonverbal and not, like therapists, families not understanding, to moving to an app and then just moving to a notepad. He's come a long way. So I think it's definitely possible. We just need to understand what works best with that individual.
So while you were telling about the app Avas, Just a curiosity to know. I think many parents also would like to know how that works. So can you just
Sure. So ours is, like I mentioned, very simple to use. In fact, most people can get trained very easily, and ours also provides a lot of training. There's picture category, there's typing category. Pictures again start with something really simple. It could be as simple as a yes or no, or if yes or no is very abstract, then you will probably start with their own name, then move on to their family. So you can click pictures, you can have categories. There could be family category, there could be places to visit category, where further you can have categories, restaurants, other places. So you will start with teaching them their most basic needs, like hunger, toilet. So they'll open the app, where there's a picture category, and you will train them how to use that. Post that, once you're comfortable using the pictures and are able to communicate and get what they want, you will simultaneously start with typing 1 or 2 words. So there's a typing category specifically. So you move on to that, where they type and it text to speech happens. It's a little slow sometimes. So some of them who are, very well versed, we've seen them getting restless. But it works well. We can have a perfectly normal conversation, just like how we are doing with that app. It's just that they're not speaking, they're typing. It's a beautiful app to explore.
Okay, thank you. Okay, now next is like what challenges can be addressed through behavioral interventions?
Okay, so these days behavioral interventions mean different things to different people, and a lot of times people use it very casually as well. People use it without having enough background knowledge on what it really entails. But to answer your question, it can be very effective in addressing various challenges. Actually, it could be communication challenges, just like how we spoke through the use of communication boards or AAC. It could be to address social skills, not to make them normal, but to sort of meet us midway, so we can help each other understand each other. So it's important to teach them the neurotypical social skills, but then don't have to have expectations that he or she will suddenly change and become normal. Or it could be to address sort of, like coping difficulties with emotional regulation. A lot of them do have difficulties with that. So behavioral interventions could be used to come up with coping strategies to manage that. It could, of course, be used with, to teach on self-help skills as well. Now, when it comes to autism, specifically, the picture is a little complicated because they may exhibit very challenging behaviors such as aggression, there's self-injury, of course, aggression towards others. It could be non-compliance and certain odd behaviors, which, you just can't understand why that is happening. So, but what happens when you're working with such a child? There's a tendency to focus only on those behaviors, right?
Yeah.
But what is important is these interventions actually must help identify the underlying cause of these behaviors, not just the behavior that you see outwardly, but really understand the root cause of this behavior and develop appropriate strategies. Now what happens without understanding this? We will just be forcing the child to do things no matter how distressing the child finds them. What if it's a genuine sensory issue, but it's coming across as a behavior, right? We must identify the root cause. Let's say he's hypersensitive to auditory senses, and you're in a classroom where there are other children talking, there's teacher talking, and there's probably outside noise, and he's showing certain behaviors. It could be some sort of a stimming behavior, or it could be something else, or it could be biting himself. So what happens? There's over focus on, this happens with us also, right? Because we tell parents, honestly, we're not perfect. We're trying to figure out how each child is and what happens. So constantly educators sometimes come down and they're like, he's just biting himself too much today, and we don't know what to do. So there's so much focus on outward behavior. We often forget probably it's a sensory issue, or maybe it's, it's something else that's bothering him. Maybe he has a headache, some physical health issue as well. So we must really identify the root cause, support the challenges that are making it difficult for the child to do something. In fact, I was reading about this somewhere, and I think it makes perfect sense. Imagine if someone gives you a reward, okay, for walking on hot coal. You may want to walk on it to get that reward, very nice reward. So you will walk on that hot coal to get that, but you will be really distressed by it. Or imagine if someone will punish you for not walking on hot coal. So you will walk on it to avoid that punishment, but you will still be distressed by it. Now imagine exactly the same situation, but if someone is going to give you a protective footwear to walk on hot coal, so you will be able to walk on it without getting distressed, right? So that's how we need to help them, not by just modifying the behavior through rewards or punishments, but by identifying and supporting the need that gives rise to that behavior, that underlying root cause. So I think, it becomes really important to understand that each student is unique. So their behavioral intervention plan as well, right? That should be really tailored to their specific strengths and challenges. So it can't be like a regular behavioral modification plan. Each child, it may vary. And they have phases as well. When there are some behaviors that we observe frequently, suddenly that is gone, something else comes up. So your plan will need to change accordingly. And this is when I think, collaboration becomes important. So it's not just the role of the behavior therapist to figure out all by himself or herself. It really becomes important to talk to parents, of course, talk to special educators, talk to the psychologist. Maybe there's some other, like emotional issues that he's dealing with. It could be occupational therapists, could be speech therapists, and of course, the individual himself as well. If he's able to talk about, the difficulties that he's experiencing, which very few people can, but if that is an option, then we must encourage it. So that's why, every time we talk about behavioral intervention, I always believe that it's really a collaborative effort. It's never, just one therapist or one person trying to figure out this.
True. We need to collaborate and work on, right? And so here, there is another question that most of us parents, even us or parents, they aim to get the child fit in a mainstream, but we miss out on enabling the schools to accept the child and support his or her special needs. So what do you recommend to the schools, and how do we support them?
Okay. I honestly don't have a perfect answer to this. I think there are multiple ways to support the school and the community as well. It could be, of course, through, professional development and training programs that can help educators create supportive and accommodating, learning environment for these students. Also, I think what would really help is that regular communication and collaboration with parents, as that can help educators better understand the needs of that particular child, implement appropriate strategies. I know this is difficult. A lot of schools are not comfortable doing that. But I think if, the parent community can sort of get through to the school management and help them understand, hey, listen, I know my child, I know he's part of all these therapies, but here in your school, this could help. It could be very minor changes to the environment, or it could be, let's say, he's finding it difficult to cope up with certain things, like something in academics. It's just about managing those levels. Start off with some basic level, see how he's performing, then slowly increase the level. But what I'm trying to say is, most importantly, I think it just requires a different mindset, different perspective on how success is defined, because for schools that is important, right? So they need to relook at the whole thing, and that's something that we as a community, parent community, or somebody who's part of this community as a professional can really help them with. In fact, as I say this, I am reminded of an interview I watched of Jiddu Krishnamurthy. When
Mhm.
the interviewer asks, is it possible to know the quality of gold without testing it, in a special way? Similarly, can the capacity of each child be known without some sort of examination? So he
Mm.
says, do you think you can really understand the capacity of the child through examination? You're completely wrong. One child may, fail because he's very nervous about examinations. He's just very fearful. Probably he's a bright child, but just can't perform. While somebody else can just, slip through because he's just less affected by it. Doesn't matter. He'll just go write something. Whereas if you watch each child, week after week, and if you observe his character, the way he plays games, the way he talks or doesn't talk, the way he shows his interest, what interest he has, how he studies, the food he eats, whom he sits with, doesn't sit with, that is how you understand, the child. And you don't need examination for that to happen. You will know what he's capable of. But we never, thought about all these things. And that, that interview opened up so many things, for me personally as well. And another thing, that keeps coming up, because everyone wants to blame mainstream schools, right? I mean,
Yeah.
we are doing that, intentionally or not. We sometimes do that. We expect the schools to modify the environment and demand somehow provide the support, to meet the needs of the individual child. As such, it's an incredible, task. Imagine those with sensory difficulties, with
Mm.
communication challenges. So
Mm.
when we choose inclusion without ensuring that all the stressful variables are well defined, everyone should know what will trigger this child and how that can be easily integrated into the overall system. What we will end up doing is we will run the risk of placing the child or placing the children in an environment that's constantly invalidating them.
Mm.
In fact, we have students who come from mainstream schools. They're often so stressed out
Mm.
because probably that's not, where they belong. They genuinely have difficulty coping up with such an environment. For some children, of course, inclusion can work very well, but with, some sort of adaptation, some accommodations, some modifications tailored to their individual needs. It could be, for example, if, let's say, in a question paper there are 15 things to answer, maybe this child will need to answer just 5 or 6.
Mm.
As simple as that, right? So when
Mm.
we see schools struggle with all of this, I honestly think it's a major systemic problem and not just individual attitudes of the school personnel,
Mm.
right? It's
Correct.
people, and most often, at least that's what I want to believe, that people go into teaching and education to help children grow and develop. So if you feel like most of the schools are struggling, then there are issues inherent in what we're asking the system to do.
Mm.
See, children, regardless of abilities, need to be in a setting that validates their uniqueness,
Mm.
fosters a sense of competence, right? So it doesn't matter a lot of times whether you're in an inclusive school, mainstream school, or a special school. They
Correct.
need to be able to use that potential that they have. What would also help, apart from training teachers and better collaboration and communication, is, I think, building a curriculum that are based on different learning styles, but integrated into the same building. This way, all the children can benefit from sort of being integrated with everyone,
Mm.
um, with their sensory, their social, their academic needs are
Mm.
also respected and satisfied. Long way to go, but I think,
There is still
we
hope.
can start
Yeah.
somewhere.
Yes, true. Yeah. And thank you so much, for such an enlightening and insightful suggestions and this. And this will definitely help many of the parents who are listening. And okay, I'll start on with the question answer sessions from parents.
Sure.
So the question is about how can an ADHD child be able to handle a classroom situation, and what measures can be taken in a class to handle such children?
Okay. So what happens most often with ADHD children is they're restless, and there's a tendency to leave tasks incomplete. They're in a hurry to finish. Maybe something else is attracting their attention. Maybe some the classroom environment as well is that way, right? What would help is one, identifying a buddy in the class, who can sort of assist the child, because a lot of children with ADHD have the capacity to make good friendship as well. They're very easy to talk to. They love friendship. So having a buddy would help. From a teacher's point of view, to I think set goals differently, like break down the task, help him finish off small segments. That way he's feeling like, oh, I've accomplished quite a lot. Just breaking it down will help. And of course, some sort of a token mechanism where tell him, hey, this is the behavior expectation, and you will get so many points when you complete that. But of course, provide him with whatever required support in order to do that. Giving him frequent breaks. Let's say there's a tendency to sort of become restless and want to run around the classroom. Why not give him tasks like distributing something to everyone? It could be textbooks, question papers, whatever that is, right? Be like a teaching assistant to the teacher. Give him some responsibility, or if possible, if the environment can facilitate this, maybe give him an option. Have a visual schedule, have some sort of a schedule where he understands, okay, I can do this, then I get to go to the ground, take a round and come back, so that energy is being used. But if this doesn't happen, right, I remember we work with an adult right now. She has ADHD, and she was talking about how these days her symptoms are sort of increasing. She said, I'm just so disturbed. Apparently her mother was not well, so she asked her to make lunch. So she started making lunch. Suddenly she remembered that she had taken out all the clothes from the wardrobe to sort of clean and put it back. So she remembered that, so she went to do that. And then she remembered she wanted to play some music on her phone. So she got lost in selecting the song. And then she realized that she was cooking. When she went back, it was all burnt. So it can be that crazy, right? Now, what helped her is like a schedule, an alarm system. So she's come up with these solutions on her own, not that we had to tell her. So she's figured out a way to manage that. But these kind of things can start right in school, where you're equipping the child with those tools. Of course, this girl struggled her school life, her college life, so much of trauma, very poor confidence, but she had to figure out all this by herself. But if we can start doing this, providing them with the required tools right from a young age, it becomes very easy to manage. So what would help, like I said, is these behavioral expectation sort of charts, point system, having a buddy, working as a teaching assistant, wherever their restlessness can be sort of managed. And of course, like I mentioned, with regard to attention deficit, break down the tasks. Keep it simple so he's able to complete it quickly. That would help as well.
Okay. So the next question is, what can we expect as parents who have a child suffering from specific learning disability from school? Like, what concessions does CBSE provide for a child with any kind of disability, like dyslexia or any?
I think there's, extra time. There's, of course, handwriting exemption. You can avail a scribe. Like I mentioned, your spellings are exempted. There's no problem with that. I don't know if there's an option to type. I was told some of them are given that exemption, but I'm really not sure if that's a rule or it's there as a part of the CBSE policy. But yeah, there are exemptions like this. In fact, I remember somebody wanted just a prompter, not even a scribe. Because of attention deficit, he has a tendency to sort of get distracted. So he just needed a prompter who will just sit along with him and prompt him to write. He can write very well. So yeah, these are some exemptions available.
Yeah, okay. And next one is, how can a child with visual impairment be helped in a regular inclusive school?
Okay, that I'm not very sure of, because we don't really work with children with visual impairment here. But if the school has a computer lab, there's a very simple application available called JAWS, which converts text to speech, so he can listen to the textbooks. And I think there are a lot of lessons recorded as well these days that can be given to the child to learn. Scribe, like Braille, of course, if at all he's used to Braille, because a lot of children don't get trained in Braille these days. But if he has, then of course that's an option as well. But again, teachers need to be equipped with this. If teachers don't know Braille, if teachers don't know what kind of applications are available these days, I mean, forget about using JAWS, right? Your normal MS Office has text to speech. If such a simple thing can be enabled, maybe he can at least listen to it, if not type, and then use a scribe to tell the answer, and the scribe can write. So something as simple as that would also help. As in fact, NEP, of course, it's not being used right now in Karnataka. They've recently sort of cancelled it, but then NEP does list down all the things that the schools will need to do as part of being inclusive of children of all disabilities. It could be sign language, it could be, Braille, learning Braille. A lot of thought has gone into formulating something like this.
So how can we as parents help our child with dyslexia in studies at home?
Okay, so dyslexia often, comes with difficulty with reading, but then there could be other challenges as well. What would help is, working with his or her, remedial instructor. It can't be what happens with children with dyslexia. And in fact, and the family as well, is they just feel he's lazy. So the most frequent thing that is done is to make him repeat. Just keep, reading, you will get it. No, there's a genuine difficulty where, he's probably replacing words. He's using, his skipping words when he's reading as well. So breaking down the task, working with his remedial educator to sort of have a home program where he could look at understanding individual words, using that in various contexts, and then moving on to phrases and sentences, breaking it down, that helps. So parallel reading, just listening to, telltale storybooks to understand how things are pronounced. And a lot of children with dyslexia has anxiety with reading as well. So in fact, with one of the students we work with, what is helping is, I don't know if it's really just psychological or what, but then just doing like a mindful meditation before we start reading, where it's like a guided tour, where we tell him certain things, where he imagines, he'll just close his eyes, he'll imagine, and then starting off with reading. With him, it's working. It may not work with others, but with him, it helps. So you really need to work with that individual remedial teacher to figure out, because again, dyslexia also is a spectrum. We don't know what exactly he has difficulty with. Understanding the core of that and working with the personal therapist would definitely help.
So do you have any message for the community and parents?
Sure. See, I think, for the parents, right? I think we should really avoid fix my child mindset. Even to this day, parents do come in and say, do something, just fix him, do something. He should become normal. I think it's really important for parents to educate yourself as much as possible about the child, about the kind of interventions he or she may benefit from. It becomes really important to understand that you're in this for the long haul. So whatever, plans you make, ensure that they are sustainable, rather than, sorry to use this term, but shopping for all the alternatives at once. I will invest in this tool, that therapy, this therapy, everything at once, which will not only overwhelm the child, but also have an effect on the finances as well, right? All these therapies are quite expensive. So it's one is that, right? I mean, really understand what would benefit, and you're in this for the long haul. You don't have a choice. So carefully plan it out. And most importantly, I think to seek help, as and when required, especially your mental health, because you are the pillar of support for your children. And like I mentioned earlier, build your own tribe. For the community, I think it's very, very important to understand that disability can happen to anyone. It's just one birth away or one accident away, right? So we must value every individual, no matter how different they are. In fact, every time I talk about this, when we talk about differences, when we talk about community and how we can play an important role, I'm always reminded of a quote by a Buddhist monk called Thich Nhat Hanh. He says, when you plant lettuce and it doesn't grow well, you don't blame the lettuce, right? You look into the reasons, you look at the conditions that lettuce is in. It may need more fertilizer, more water, probably less sun, but you never blame the plant as such. So I think, in our journey, right, we really need to be more kind, accepting, because at the end of the day, we all know that differences may be challenging sometimes, but don't you think that's what makes our world very beautiful? And like I mentioned, disability can happen to anyone at any point. So if not for anything, we just need to learn to be kind. And that's my message for the community.
That was a lovely message, and definitely this was such an enlightening and insightful session. And thank you so much. And your expertise, suggestions, and guidance will definitely help parents and other individuals to spread awareness and acceptance to create an inclusive environment in schools and as well as our surroundings. And so thank you once again from bottom of our heart. So before we end, we would also like to thank Chetna Manch for collaborating with us for this initiative and inviting one of our parents to create awareness this month. And we all know that August is approaching, and as part of awareness, we are coming with, Art Fest. So to support this initiative, we would invite your participation and also appeal you to be part of our inclusion pledge that we have been going through. So details of all these events will be forwarded in Spectrum, the awareness project page. And also, we would like you to be there tomorrow at 7 p.m. for yet another Meet the Guest of the 99th session of Talk to the Expert series with Ms. Reva Sudeep, founder, DNUDGE, and Vice President, Approach Autism Society, Jaipur, in conversation with our Awareness Ambassador, Divya Kapoor Gosai. That is tomorrow, 29th of July at 7 p.m. And thank you all for being such a wonderful audience. Have a nice day. Take care.
Thank you.